Please have your seat. And this morning we have the pleasure of presence of Dale Ray to do our invocation. And please stand, and then following the Pledge of Allegiance.
Just briefly from the Proverbs. Proverbs 14 reminds us, in the fear of the Lord there is a strong confidence, and then wisdom rests in the heart of him who has understanding, and righteousness exalts a nation. Our precious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you have given to us. May our hearts rejoice in it and truly be glad. I thank you for the chairman and for the county supervisors. I ask your blessing upon each and every one of them. I ask that you would give them understanding in the matters that will come before them this day, that they will continue to guide our county with a strong confidence and a boldness that will be to the good of all the citizens. And I ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. You'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome. The Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into the executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to the Arizona revised statutes. At this point, I'll call for a motion action to call for an executive session to be held November 5th, 2018 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with the Arizona revised statutes 38-431.03, portions A3, 4, and 7 to discuss items noticed on the agenda with an asterisk.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'll second it. Is Buster on the line? Well, so is she.
And let's verify if Supervisor Johnson is on the phone.
Supervisor Johnson?
I'm here.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Aspen, any items for litigation and claims domains?
Nothing for the board this morning.
Thank you. On to committee reports. Supervisor Johnson.
Nothing this morning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I just wanted to say that along with county supervisors representing all 15 counties, attended the CSA Legislative Summit in Yuma last week. Chairman Watson, Supervisor Angus, Supervisor Wakamoto, and myself joined in working together with other counties to establish the CSA agenda for the 2019 legislative session. The work sessions were productive and produced legislative policy items that we believe will save local taxpayers dollars and increase investment in our local roads and our highways. 5 counties submitted legislative proposals for this 2019 legislative session were adopted, including 3 that were submitted by this board. And then I also wanted to recognize our clerk of the board, Jenny Anderson, who was completed her accredited certification program and was recognized at this CSA meeting. So, Jenny, congratulations. That concludes my report, Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Supervisor Angus.
I think Supervisor Bishop said it all.
Supervisor Wakamoto.
I've gone to, I'm trying to think which Friday it was. I think it was last Friday. Governor Ducey came down to meet with stakeholders here in Kingman, and we were able to talk about the aquifers and our concerns about making sure that we were able to protect and monitor our aquifers And he smiled and said, yes, we understand that. But at the DCP, the Drought Contingency Plan meetings that have been ongoing, the main two items that they have wanted to cover was Pinal Ag mitigation and intentionally created surplus, which is people using less water and intentionally keeping the water behind the dam to create a level so that a drought would not be called. The two items that were to be moved forward went well in many respects. The intentionally created surplus is looking like we will have contracts to look at before the end of the month. The Pinal Ag mitigation was going well. Their total mitigation, full mitigation for them would be half of the water that they were using in the past. However, because of the geological survey that showed that we only received 1% of the runoff that we had usually been receiving, Pinal Ag was told that they would have to take another cut, bringing their mitigation level from 120,000 acre feet to 105,000 acre feet. This was going well until Colorado Indian community, Don Pongras, the lawyer for them, who have been very supportive of Mojave County in their move to keep water on the river, objected and thought that mitigation for Pinal County should only be 80,000 acre feet. This creates a huge problem in terms of moving this mitigation forward. And as of now, stakeholders and people are trying to see what we can do to mitigate that problem. And that's it.
Well, thank you for all your hard work and an excellent report. The last several weeks have been quite a bit of travel for me. I went to the CSA, and thank you for your report this morning, Supervisor Bishop. Last week I was in Salt Lake and attended the Wild Horse and Burro Conference, and that's where the actual committee for the Wild Horse and Burros met. They discussed a number of issues on how to control and mitigate the problems with the wild horses. There are currently 76,000 wild horses roaming the West. Many of the areas in which they're congregated are destroying a great deal of the environment. And so they're trying to find solutions to come up with a plan for these 76,000 wild horses. In Arizona, of which I got to talk a little bit about because I was the only representative from Arizona. We currently have 7,200 burros roaming the West down here, predominantly in Mojave County. It's where about 2/3 of the burros live. And I can say that Ray Souza, the director of the Arizona BLM, has accomplished an 800 number of burros rounded up in the last 12 months. So I think that's an exemplary job, a huge lift, 800 out of the 7,200. But still not enough to make an effective change on the environment. So we're still working hard to come up with some solutions. So that's pretty much the end of my report. It was a lot of mileage, but it was, I think, well worth it. A number of solutions were talked about. Birth control as being one of them, and gelding is another, and another number of other solutions, and then some more radical solutions were discussed but not totally entertained. So with that, thank you. That's my report. County Manager report.
I have no report today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Approval of the September 4th, 2018 Board of Supervisors minutes.
Chairman Watson, I'll make the motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Now we're on to the call of the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public regarding matters not on the board agenda must fill out and submit to the clerk a call of the public request to speak form. They are located in the back of the room, and that must be done prior to the meeting. Pursuant to the Arizona Revised Statutes, a public body may make an open call to the public during a public meeting, subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on any issue within the jurisdiction of that public body. At the conclusion of an open call to the public, individuals of the members, public, may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the public body, may ask to have staff to review a matter, ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the public body shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. So with that, we have 4 people that would like to speak. Jennifer Espinoza.
Jennifer Esposito, 3211 East Snavely Avenue, Kingman. Good morning, Chairman and Board. I think the recent tragic events regarding flooding on Shinnerump in Golden Valley highlights the need for more scrutiny of that road for public safety. I know that in the past I have asked a couple of board members to please take the time to drive it all the way from the freeway to Estrella Avenue. The current repairs being done are on the paved section. And while I realize that no one on this board lives in Golden Valley or owns property there, some of us do own property there and use this road, which is much more traveled than Legend Ranch and is a public safety concern. The biggest problem is where the road is paved, it sort of is higher in the center and slopes off to the side, which does allow rainwater and flooding to run off. When you get to the section past Aztec, which runs all the way, into almost to Estrella, where it becomes paved again, every time this road has to be graded, what happens is the silt that has run off onto the road is piled up along the sides, creating a high bank and turning Shinnerump into essentially a riverbed. So that every single time this is, quote, maintained, it actually worsens the problem. This has been a problem clearly ongoing for years, probably even decades. Since I brought up to the board before at one time, it's my understanding it was actually on the long-term plan to be dealt with and at some point was taken off. I've asked this board in the past to please look at when that happened and why that happened and what they could do to at least put it back on the plan of things that the county needs to look at before someone else is injured or killed in the flooding that happens predictably and regularly. For the money that is spent to constantly maintain this every time it rains, I would have to think that the money spent since it was taken off the long-term plan would have been enough to have paved it and prevent the continual waste of resources that goes into keeping it usable, only knowing that it's going to fail again and only knowing that the problem is getting worse. So please, I'm asking this board to take a few minutes out of their time and just drive it. Drive it today when you leave here and just see for yourself what the residents of Golden Valley are dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Espinoza. Ms. Hoagland-Smith?
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Watson, for being so concerned about the wild animals. We get the burros every day, waking us up about 4:30 in the morning, so I can appreciate your efforts. I've attended numerous meetings here, and I've heard the word average. The word average is used to establish base salaries to justify raises. Since the board appreciates the word average, I'd like to share this average statistic with you. Per the FBI, the average number of U.S. sworn county officers is 2.7 per 1,000 citizens. When we do the math for Mojave County, we find one officer for every 2,590 citizens based on the U.S. Census data of 2017. If we drill down further to Golden Valley, as of the 2010 census, we had a population of 8,370. This raises a question of how many sworn law enforcement officials are assigned to Golden Valley. You know, Golden Valley is your fastest growing area in the county, by the way. According to the FBI, Golden Valley should have 22, 2.7 per 1,000 citizens based on the 2010 census. The reality is Golden Valley, with documented over 8,000 citizens, probably closer to 10,000 now, shares one deputy with Dolan Springs, with a 2010 census of about 2,033. The shared deputy is because of Sheriff Schuster's leadership efforts, not because of this board. Even having one dedicated officer for over the 8,000 Golden Valley residents would be a dramatic improvement. The safety of rural citizens of Golden Valley, Dolan Springs, Meadview, and other Mojave County rural communities is being dangerously shortchanged in favor of excessive non-essential county personnel. Last month, there was a request for a public information officer, and this month, the adding of a vital person to the recorder's office. With the dire and documented need of law enforcement officers here in Mojave County, this body of elected officials believes an information officer is essential or an employee in the recorder's office is vital. Will these two non-essential personnel come out to a robbery, an accident, or heavens forbid, a shooting? Will they protect the unprotected rural taxpayers, their families, their properties? We all know the answer to that question. Nope. Now is the time for the BOS to stop kicking the can down the road and address the rural property owners here in Mojave County, the protection of its citizens, especially those in the rural areas. Mojave County doesn't have a revenue problem. No, the problem is one of priorities. And this board's continued expansion of county government, where non-essential personnel are considered necessary and vital, kind of reminds me of Nero fiddling while Rome burns. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Boone?
Michael Boone, 2210 Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu City. Good morning, Board. I'm bringing this back up regarding Mr. Hendricks' false statements he made in two different board meetings and his walk back at the last one. I think there's more than enough evidence to criminally charge him with Mojave County Ordinance 2013-05, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor. He made public spontaneous statements off of a prepared statement, so there's knowledge of what he was doing. He walked it back using a prepared statement, so there's knowledge of what he's doing. And his emails that clearly dispute the statement that he gave was untruthful. I doubt it'll get prosecuted in Mojave County, so we're sending this somewhere else to get some attention. Mr. Esplin was present when he made the false statements, and as officer of the court, he has a duty. Now, coming in here today, oh, one more thing. I thought about the citizen's arrest statute, but I didn't think we could get anybody to take custody of them. When I ran a security company here in Arizona, we made a lot of arrests for shoplifting, but we had a procedure that we worked with Phoenix, Tucson, and Yuma. So I don't know what would happen here in Mojave County. Coming into the meeting today, I was stopped outside and said, since Mr. Hendricks likes everything to be so out in the open, he needs to start looking at what's going on in planning and zoning. I understand there's several building permits that have been closed and have now been changed, which is an alteration of a government document, which is a felony. And finally, Mr. Hendricks, you once said you got 3 votes, so you're going to stay. I'm curious, do you get a referral fee from educational services for all these county employees that you resurface back into our system?
Ms. Morgaine?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jem Morgan. I'm a District 1 constituent. I'm going to defer. The call to the public that I was going to speak on is about Colorado City. I will defer speaking on that until I return again because my comments are not directed at Supervisor Wakamoto personally, but I do want to respond to her report on the meeting that she had with Governor Ducey. She said that Governor Ducey came up one Friday and met with the stakeholders here in the county to discuss the county aquifer situation. And what really stood out for me in that portrayal of the meeting was meeting with stakeholders in the county. Now, I understand that's the way that these things get discussed. We meet with stakeholders. We bring all the stakeholders to the table. But we're talking about the real stakeholders here are the property owners in Mojave County whose water is being depleted by the commercial agriculture, particularly out on Stockton Hill Boulevard, speaking specifically with Kingman area stakeholders. And I know that there wasn't a single one of these real, genuine stakeholders at that meeting where the governor shook his head and said, yes, 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 we know there's a problem. And yet they go back away and nothing is ever done to actually help Mojave County. So this isn't anything critical against you, Supervisor Wakamoto. It's more about the way the state is addressing our county's real water issue. Now, I understand that this county board is working very hard to do what it thinks is in the best interest to protect our water, and I appreciate that because I was at La Paz County Board of Supervisors meeting where they just rubber stamped the lease of water for 25 years out of the river and down in Quartzsite. So I do appreciate that this board is at least trying to address the issue. But the fundamental issue that needs to be addressed in order for the true stakeholders to be protected with their water in this county is to change those outdated, antiquated, 100-year-old water rights laws that are allowing 5 privileged corporate entities in this state to have unlimited access to the water at the expense of the genuine stakeholders here in Mojave County, which is the property owners. So I'm asking this board once again to put pressure on our state legislators to do their job and change, at least fight to change, specifically ARS 11-811, which is the powers to the county to zone and rezone, which this county has been granted. Thank you.
Ms. Morgaine, you wrote on your request that you wanted to speak with Colorado City.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you wanted to add?
I told them, Mary Robinson and I, we visited Colorado City shortly before the primary. We had an opportunity to speak with those people.
Well, we can't speak of a campaign, but is there something specific of Colorado City you would like to speak of?
Yes, that's just the context of why we were there. I wanted to share with this board that the people of Colorado City, they swarmed us when we arrived because they have needs there that are so unique and so complex and so just unacknowledged that those people there are really struggling. They're struggling to to get access to their properties, the property values. I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to talk about this after the water.
Okay,
so
I can help you a little bit. Last Friday, our county treasurer, Cindy Cox, our county recorder, Christy Blair, myself, and Representative Regina Cobb were in Colorado City on last Friday, where 4 deeds were actually given to people that will be owning their property in Colorado City.
Excellent.
So we're quite well aware of the number of issues that are up there.
I appreciate that because it was
I
heart-wrenching.
just want to make sure that you knew that
Yes.
we were responsive, and Mojave County is very responsive to Colorado City and that area.
Okay, I appreciate that because it's heartbreaking what's happening to those people up there. Thank you.
Thank you. On to presentations. Presentation of a dedicated service award to local pastor Dale Ray, the person that gave our invocation this morning, by Mojave County Sheriff Doug Schuster and guest Sheriff Michael Bonham from Osage County Sheriff's Office. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Chairman Watson, distinguished members of the board, Mr. Hendricks, Mr. Epsilon, and of course, Madam Clerk. As always, I want to thank you for allowing me this public opportunity for recognition of those who serve. We are here today to recognize and to honor Pastor Dale Ray of the Lakeside Community Church in Lake Havasu City. Pastor Ray has volunteered for the past 32 years as a counselor, as a mentor, often as a sounding board, but most importantly, a spiritual leader to several lost souls in the Mojave County jail system. Pastor Ray was instrumental many years ago in starting our program. We now have over a dozen chaplains, both men and women of faith, volunteering at the jail. In just a moment, I will turn the podium over to Sheriff Mike Bonham. Mike is a dear friend of mine. I met Mike while I was attending the National Sheriff's Institute for Leadership, and immediately we clicked. I recognize that Mike is not only a brother behind the badge, but also a brother in faith, and he explained to me a program that he was involved with. You see, Mike's not just a sheriff, he's also an ordained minister. And so Mike was explaining a program, and I said, I know just the person that fits that bill. So I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Mike Bonham of Osage County, Missouri, and I'll let him explain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Board, it's my pleasure to come from Missouri. I also sit as the chairman of the Bible Way Chaplaincy Association. I sit on the Board of Regions there. I'm on the Amber Board. How many boards you got? I mean, four or five?
Getting bored.
I got bored. Several boards that we sit on, but that's not why we're here to announce what I wanted to make sure that we recognize those men and women that care about their community, that reach out through the chaplaincy. And it's very important to receive this award. You have to be totally engaged with your community. You have to have years of service, 25 or plus, 32. And he definitely meets that definition of what our chaplaincy is about, is serving those that serve others. And I know that chaplain, after spending some time, I got to come to your lovely state in July at 122 degrees. And believe me, the humidity I'll take, amen. But we wanted to present Chaplain Ray this morning with this Lifetime Achievement Award for his dedicated service to your county and to the citizens of your county. We thank you for your service, sir. God bless you. Also, if I may, I want to present your sheriff on behalf of our Highway Patrol. We know that he's interested in water service. Water Patrol and the Highway Patrol want to thank you for service and taking care of me while I'm out here because they knew I needed taken care of. And from all of our chaplains at the Missouri Sheriff's Association, I sit on the legislative committee, they prayed over this as a point of contact to give to you from the Missouri Sheriffs to the Arizona Sheriffs. May your care and custody, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Let's
you.
take a quick photo.
Okay.
I'm going to let you chat just a second.
Let me grab that.
Yeah, there you go.
And Pastor Ray just has a few words.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's been an honor to serve in my post with the county. My wife and I have been a part of the county for since 1972, and I want to say a very specific thank you to Sheriff Doug Schuster, whose heart is great to make sure that there is some follow-up and some spiritual care given at the facility for the inmates. It's also been an honor to minister to officers and to serve along several. I would like to say a big thank you to the Bible Way Chaplains Association for the presentation of the honor, to a mentor friend, Nelson Marangola, who actually started in the program with me in 32 plus years ago, and then when he became a judge had to step aside from that position, but who encouraged me to continue to this very day. To other officers, including the current jail commander, Don Bishkoff, and the current programs officer, Troy Enholtz, I give my thanks. Through the years, a precious officer, Frida Reed, and to Lori Hoover, and to the many other chaplains who serve with me to lighten the load. I want to say a very, very big thank you today. God bless you all.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure, Sheriff. Okay, now we'll go on to the consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group, acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items unless the board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Supervisor Johnson, do you have any items to pull from the consent agenda?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop?
I'd like to pull 27, 42, and 44.
27,
42
42,
and 44.
and 44.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus?
Nothing?
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Nothing.
And my item's been pulled, so Chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agenda, items 5 through 44, with the exception of 27, 42, and 44.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 27. Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I just wanted to pull this item so that the folks that are watching from Dolan Springs that are not aware understand that we are going to be reducing the operating hours of the Mojave County Library due to the usage being down. So if we could have Kathy Pennell come to the podium and give a little background on that. And by the way, I have not received any calls from my constituents in the Dolan Springs area about this, but I just want to make sure that it's clear. Good morning, Kathy. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Supervisor Bishop, members of the board.
Morning.
We have, over the past few years, been noticing a decline in the usage of the library in Dolan Springs. At one point, they were our busiest library, but that no longer seems to be the case. We do have a library services to outlying areas policy, which sets hours for the community libraries based on their usage. And they currently have been in Dolan Springs at 20 hours per week that they are open. The other level is 15 hours a week. We do have our library in Fort Mojave that is not really covered by any of these in the policy because they are open 40 hours a week. So over the past 3 years, we've seen, as I said, a decline, particularly in the number of people through the library and in our computer usage. So we've tried to figure out why that is, and the only thing that I can surmise based on the usage is that people A few more people have internet than did in the past because they're not coming into the library to use the computers. So that seems to be the issue. What we're looking at is closing our, not being open on Fridays, and that will take the 5 hours away that, take it down to from 20 hours a week to 15, as the majority of our community libraries are.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm sure as usage comes back up, that we'll reconsider
Of course.
reopening on that Friday.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pennell.
If there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 27. Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus? Yes. Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item number 42. Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I pulled this item because I just want to call attention to the fact that we do have a 168 square foot office located in the Mojave County Complex in Lake Havasu City, and it's currently being leased, and we're here to renew that lease with the Disabled American Veterans, which I think is an honorable cause, and I don't have a problem with that at all. But I would like to see if this board would continue this item until the newly elected supervisor in that area has an opportunity to review it and consider maybe he may want to place his office in the county building. So that was my intent for pulling it, to see if there's support to just put this off until Ron Gold can have input.
Mr. Chairman, may I try to address that?
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Administration has been in contact with Mr. Gould and also Supervisor Johnson, and I've got my facilities staff and Public Works reviewing the floor plan with the supervisor-elect and with Supervisor Johnson. And we believe that we've identified an area that would be conducive and agreeable to Supervisor-elect Gould, and that we can accommodate him without adversely impacting this particular portion of the building that's being leased by the veterans.
Okay, with that information, I will make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion for approval.
Second.
And second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And on to item number 44.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. This is interesting because Courtney Schritter Proudfoot is my brother's granddaughter, and there's been some back and forth on social media and in the public about all the nepotism going on in Mojave County, and so I pulled this to let everybody know that I'm very proud of my great-grandniece, but she doesn't qualify as a relative legally. She certainly does as far as my family is concerned, but my husband's family came here in the 1800s, and my family came here in the early 50s, so just about everybody in this room, unless they're new to Mojave County, is related to me in one way or another. So if I recuse myself from every vote for every distant first, second, third distant cousin, I would never be voting. So I thought about recusing myself from this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and vote, but there is no nepotism going on in my family. I just have lots of distant relatives. So.
Well, I've got one to even add to that one. I've come to find out that my father was a second cousin to a Proudfoot that lived here in Kingman. Now, if this is Ted Proudfoot's granddaughter, that would make some type of relation, like a fourth or a fifth cousin, I suppose.
What does that make you to me?
I'm not sure. But we do have someone would like to speak to the item. Mr. Boone, come on down.
Michael Boone, 2210 Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu City. I think you may want to read the nepotism clause in the ARS regarding blood relatives and how far out. I think you might be mistaken. First of all, there was no job announcement that I saw for this position anywhere, listing an educational requirement, and you didn't recuse yourself the first time she was promoted. When she went from a clerk to an administrative assistant, you didn't recuse yourself. We went back and pulled the audio from all that, and her appointment was passed with no mention of your relationship to her. I find it interesting, and I'm sure Mr. Hendricks is at the bottom of all this, that certain people have complete personnel files that are posted as backup, and certain people don't. Now, on hers, she had no current resume. We had to work off her old resume, which shows her educational requirements. There's no college degree, there's nothing to support she's done anything between the time she was an administrative assistant and she's currently asking for this new position. Ms. Smith's right. You guys create more positions than I've ever seen. Mr. Hendricks likes to hide them through that consent agenda. Instead of getting rid of the position, he calls it something else and thinks people aren't watching. Sheriff Schuster, right, he needs more staff. I don't understand what all these people are doing. And it seems like they're related to somebody. It seems like it's a relative club, like you said. Ms. Angus' son-in-law got hired in the Treasury Department. Ms. Wakamoto got her son on a board he didn't qualify for. So it just seems like the way to get a job in Mojave County is find out who you're related to. My last name's a pretty well-known name. I'm probably related to a lot of people myself. I come from the original family. But this is getting out of control with no sense of reasoning, Mr. Hendricks, how you put this agenda together. On some of these agendas, you've got all the documentation and support. On others, you have very little. What's up with that? Is that some clandestine, surreptitious way to get things through and nobody's looking?
Chairman Watson, we're going way off stream of the issue here. We need to discuss what's on the item. The item here is whether to appoint the person to this position. It's not to discuss in general the substance of the agendas. Let's stick to the item itself.
Sure, Mr. Esplin, and I hope you do your job with Mr. Hendricks. The issue is that this should have been a public job announcement. There should have been people have the right to apply for it, and there should be some investigation why in the previous 2017 agenda, Ms. Bishop didn't make a recommendation that that was her relative. These jobs should be given to people that have the credentials to support them and have the background, not just because somebody did a good job. You say you want the best possible people. How do you get the best possible people if you don't look to see if there's any of these best possible people out there? And how can you, make a judgment and tell the public what they want when they
Thank you, Mr. Boone.
Agenda?
May I say something? Mr. Boone, you say you worked for a county in your career.
City.
A city.
3.
So you're aware that it is not the city manager or the county manager that makes the agenda, it's the clerk of the board. So every time you say that Mr. Hendricks is making these agendas, he's not. It's her, okay? No. Second of all, this is an appointed position to an elected official. It doesn't go through the same types of processes that everyday employees do. This is an appointed position, at-will position, that the recorder appoints. I hope that clarifies some of these problems that you seem to have. But there's been nothing wrong done on this particular item.
I don't seem to have any problem. I have a concern.
Okay, well, you stated it, so thank you very much.
And thank you.
Chairman Watson, just
Mr. Esplin.
Thank you. In reference to the conflict of interest, the definition of relative would not encompass this person in relation to Supervisor Gene Bishop. It's the definitions in 38502, number 9. So, just so you're aware of that.
Now, would my father's second cousin's granddaughter be a concern for me?
It would not.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that was very clear. Chair would entertain a motion for item number 44.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go on to public hearings. This item number 45 is brought to us by Sheriff Schuster. This is opening the public hearing for the discussion and possible action for the review and discussion of the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant for the fiscal year of 18. The application authorization to the county manager to sign for the certifications and assurances by the chief executive of the applicant government form. So I have opened the public hearing. Do we have anyone wishing to speak to item number 45? I'll call again. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 45? There being none, I'll close the public hearing for item 45 and entertain a motion.
Chairman Watson, I'll make a motion to approve item 45 as written.
I'll and we have a second from Supervisor Angus, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
On to item number 46. I'll open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action, the placement of a lien for a dangerous building abatement in the amount of $6,979.84 in accordance with Section 110 of the International Property Maintenance Code. This is for assessors parcel number 324-20-020. The address is 3314 East Thompson Avenue in Kingman, Arizona, 86409. The owner of record is Joseph Fiat, trustee. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 46? I'll call again. Anyone wishing to speak to item 46? There being no one, I'll close the public hearing for item number 46 and entertain a motion.
Chairman Watson, make a motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item 47. Open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action for the placement of a lien of dangerous building abatement in the amount of $3,987.69 in accordance with Section 110 of the International Property Maintenance Code, assessors parcel number 324-14-461. The address is 2605 East John L. Avenue, Kingman, Arizona, 86409. The owner of record is John Mayewski. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 47? Again, anyone wishing to speak to item number 47? With that, I'll close the public hearing for item 47 and entertain a motion.
Chairman Watson, I make a motion to approve item 47 as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
On to item number 48, I'll open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action, the placement of a lien of a dangerous building abatement in the amount of $9,361.35 in accordance with Section 110 of the International Property Maintenance Code, assessors parcel number 0-14-372. The address is 3048 East Devlin Avenue, Kingman, Arizona, 86409. The owner of record is Neil Berg. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 48? Again, anyone wishing to speak to item number 48? There being none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Chairman Watson, I make a motion to approve item 48 as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. On to item 49. I'll open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action, the placement of a lien of a dangerous building abatement in the amount of $6,438.37 in accordance with Section 110 of the International Property Maintenance Code, assessors parcel number 306-25-013M. This is located at 5630 West Diebase Drive, Golden Valley, Arizona, 86413. The owner of record is Charles Clayton. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 49? Again, anyone wishing to speak to item 49? There being none, I'll close the public hearing for item number 49.
Chairman Watson, motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. On to item 50, I'll open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action, placement of a lien of a dangerous building abatement in the amount of $8,988.28 in accordance with Section 110 of the International Property Maintenance Code. This is assessors parcel number 319-13-222. The address is 16645 North Kitmet Drive in Dolan Springs, Arizona. 46441 is the zip code. The owner of record is Robert C. Hansmeyer. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 50? Again, anyone wishing to speak to item number 50? There being none, I'll close the public hearing.
Chairman Watson,
Supervisor Bishop.
I make a motion to approve, and I also wanted to say that all of these properties are located, I believe, within District 4, so I really appreciate all the hard work that Development Services has been doing to help clean up some of our neighborhoods. I know we have a long ways to go, but this is more that I've seen in a long, long time this past year going forward. So thank you to everybody that worked so hard to clean up these properties. So I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll call roll.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Now we're on to our regular agenda. On to item number 52, discussion, possible action, and that's the acceptance of the fiscal year 2018 HUD VASH voucher funding from Mojave County Housing Authority in the amount of $196,922 to provide rental assistance for 39 homeless veterans and acknowledge the long-standing partnership between the Veterans Administration that has made this program a success. We have Dave Wolf. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just in way of background, in April 2012, Mojave County Housing Authority received its first funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program, the HUD-VASH program, to provide rental assistance for 25 homeless veterans. This program is a partnership between housing authorities and the Veterans Administration, which provides referrals and ongoing case management for the homeless veterans served through VASH. On December 5th, 2013, HUD awarded the Most Valued Partner Award to Mojave County Housing Authority in partnership with the local Veterans Administration in recognition of exemplary practices in the implementation of the HUD-VASH program. Based upon exceptional performance, the program has grown for the last 6 years, and on September 14, 2018, MCHA was notified that it was awarded additional funding for 39 more VASH vouchers, bringing the total size of the program in 6 years to 165 VASH families served. The total funding received for rental assistance for VASH families will be approximately $840,000 annually. This program could not be such a success without the continued strong partnership between Mojave County Housing Authority staff and the VA Medical Center staff. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to recognize the VA Medical Center staff and our county staff at the Housing Authority for the success of this program this time. If they
Please
can
do.
stand.
Please do.
Stand up.
Would you like, Mr. Wolf, would you like to introduce each?
Well, we have Ed Shearer. He is the VA Regional Manager for the VA Medical Center. And we have Jeremiah Jensen, who is the Veterans Administration Case Manager. I can't see without my glasses standing next to you. Go ahead. Could you introduce her, Ed? And we have Terry Bond. She's the Rental Assistance Program Supervisor. I'm getting a little nervous. Jennifer, yes. Thank you. Also, I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for your continued support of the VASH program and Mojave County Housing Authority and the Community Services Department. Finally, I would like to put out a call to landlords in the community to please be willing to work with our program. It's guaranteed rent, and we need landlords to have a successful rental assistance program. And recently, we've lost 2 apartment complexes in Kingman and had to find replacement housing for 10 families. So we desperately need landlords willing to work with our programs. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Mr. Wolf, thank you, and thank you for such an excellent job. It's a great honor for Mojave County to be a specialist to this.
Chairman Watson, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this.
We have a motion for acceptance.
Second.
And second, any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you will please call the roll, call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item 53, discussion, possible action. I acknowledge the receipt and refer to Mojave County Transportation Commission for review and recommendation of petition filed pursuant to ARS 28-6701 to designate as a county highway approximately 1.05 mile long section of East Tomahawk Drive from Arena Drive to East Saddlebag Drive located in the Lazy YU area. Any questions for Mr. Latowski?
Chairman Watson, I'd like to hear from Mr. Lukowski for justification for a county highway. it's a little unusual to designate that in a residential area, so.
Good morning, Chairman Watson, members of the board. This
Latowski.
petition was brought before us as a public petition to establish, as read in the motion, 1.05 miles of East Tomahawk Drive in the Lazy YU area. Yes, it is a residential roadway currently not maintained by Mojave County, and as part of educating the public and residents on various options to bring roads into the Mojave County maintenance system, we make residents aware of initiatives such as bringing a road up to county standard at their own expense, either to a tertiary or a regular maintenance standard, pursuing an improvement district. But then we also make them aware, because it is an open public process, of the county highway petition, which really is the only avenue by which the county can take on the expense of improving a roadway to county standards, meaning that if it were to be established a county highway, then by state statute, we would be there would be the opportunity to expend county HERF funds. Currently, there would be no such opportunity. This particular resident decided to pursue the county highway route. However, with regard to this being in a residential area and really serving no regional significance, and when I refer to regional significance, I'm referring to through traffic that might utilize a roadway to travel from place to place or neighborhood to neighborhood. And this particular segment would not provide such connectivity for through traffic. It would purely serve those residents and visitors to the Lazy YU area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Latowski. That's all the questions that I had.
I have a question for you, Mr. Latowski. Wouldn't a tertiary or a regular maintenance serve this area much better than a county highway?
Chairman Watson, members of the board, yes, that would be the most palatable route, that or the improvement district, whereby the residents themselves would bear the expense of bringing up the roadway to a county standard. In this instance, the resident who is just in the position where she desires not to take that type of expense upon herself or pursue the improvement district route, as far as staff understands it. But staff would respectfully assert, and we would perform the requisite engineering studies if directed by the board. Staff would at this point not see that regional significance and would likely make a recommendation to the board if the board were to continue this item and allow staff to consider of not establishing as a county highway.
So my question is, this is just a one applicant, is that correct? Generally, we have many applicants on a petition too.
That's correct. We have included in the board backup the petition that was in fact signed by the minimum 10 residents of Mojave County. But it was primarily initiated by a single resident, correct?
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hendricks?
And I think Director Latowski did an excellent job of characterizing that Public Works provided the applicant with all the information, all the options that they had. Once we received the petition, however, staff did not have the authority to approve or deny the petition. That's solely the responsibility of the board in accordance with statute. So the board at this time has an option to either accept the petition and refer it to, either accept the petition or deny the petition.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
And Chairman Watson, members of the board, I was remiss in not including this in the board action, but this section of Tomahawk Drive is currently in the regular maintenance system and regularly maintained by the county. The initiative is to provide a hard surface of this roadway, and hence the county highway pursuit, and also the position of the resident not to desire to take on those expenses to bring the roadway up to a hard surface condition. So the county does maintain this road as an unsurface condition.
I was thinking we did on, is it Saddle?
We were remiss in not including that in the summary statement.
Is it Tomahawk Drive or Saddle?
That's correct, Tomahawk Drive.
Tomahawk, that's correct, okay.
Chairman Watson.
Supervisor Bishop?
This road is located within District 4, which is my area of responsibility, and because this serves no regional significance and it's already a maintained road, I would recommend that the petitioner go forward in an improvement district, and so I'll make a motion that we deny sending this on to the Transportation Commission for review.
We have a motion to deny. I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? With no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll.
Supervisor Angus?
No.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. On to item 54, discussion, possible action, acknowledge the receipt and refer to Public Works a petition filed pursuant to Mojave County Ordinance 2016-09 to consider including the Mojave County Tertiary Road Maintenance System, subject to meeting all applicable requirements and subsequent to board approval, North Mariposa Drive from Chloride Road to West Uranium Road, West Uranium Road from North Mariposa Drive to North Rose Quartz Road, North Rose Quartz Road from West Uranium Road to West Old Lode Road, and west to Old Lode Road from North Rose Quartz Road, west for 645 feet, a total length of approximately 0.77 miles, located in Chloride, Arizona. I believe this might be in District Number 4.
Chairman Watson, that is also in my district, and it's a very, it's going to be a very hard road to bring up to tertiary standards, but if this applicant wants to go forward and bring it up to county standards, I'm all for it, so I'll make a motion that we do approve and send this to the Transportation Commission for review.
We have a motion for approval
I'll second.
and second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, may I interrupt?
Hendricks.
Maintenance issues do not go in front of the Transportation Commission. Transportation Commission approves capital improvement projects. So one of the things that we have to look at is to try to stay structured in our realm of accepting maintenance for roadways. And I wonder if our director, Public Works Director, can clarify that a little better for us.
Thank you, County Manager Hendricks, members of the board. Staff with the Transportation Commission consistently looks at the programming of county HERF funds toward the improvement or betterment of Mojave County roadways, either that being through a Mojave County sponsored project, a federally funded, co-federally funded project, or public petitions for county highways by which the public is requesting the county establish a project, such as we just talked about with Tomahawk Road. But we do have a multitude of roadways by which both the Transportation Commission has recommended and board has approved and programmed on the 5-year SERP soil stabilization project should funds become available. But in this instance, the petitioner merely desires at their own expense or expense of their neighbors to bring a roadway up to minimum tertiary standards for the board then to reconsider and accept into the maintenance system. So as a result, there won't be any county funds expended for the betterment of these roadways and such. The Transportation Commission typically would not look at these issues, but only those projects that would involve the expenditure of county funds.
So, Mr. Chairman, the motion, if the board so chose to make it, would be to acknowledge the petition and refer it to Public Works to work with the applicant to bring the road up to, so that they're fully informed on what's necessary to bring the road up to county standards, and then bring back a recommendation to the board on whether to accept that roadway for maintenance or not.
that was the motion I intended to make. I misspoke, so with that clarification, I'll amend my motion.
And I'll amend my second.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, do you have clarification on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. For referral to public.
Mr. Chair, can they read back the motion?
Madam Clerk, if you'll repeat the motion.
Supervisor Johnson, it's to acknowledge receipt and refer to Public Works.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item 55, approve and adoption of the Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2018-128, establishing a Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission consisting of 2 members from each supervisorial district, 1 Mojave County supervisor, and 1 Public Works representative having the responsibility for making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding the United States Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management, Kingman Travel Management Implementation Plan, and approve the Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission bylaws. We have a number of people that are interested to speak to item number 55.
Chairman Watson, can I have a clarification?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we talking about the committee, or are we talking just about the bylaws today?
I believe that we're talking about establishing the commission and approving the bylaws. Would that be correct?
Oh, okay. Because I think that when we go through the bylaws, some of the questions people have may be answered, but
Okay. You want me to go ahead and have any further comments? Rick Swatz? Thank you. Doug Wisdom?
Watson, I thank you also for the speed at which the board has moved on this issue.
Thank you. Robert Smith?
Good morning, Chairman and Board. Robert Smith, 906 Yucca Street, Bullhead City. And again, I want to thank all of you for the expediency and the efficiency that you've put together to get this plan in place so quickly. I've been off-roading for over 50 years, and I've never seen a board or county staff put together something so quickly. And I just want to say thank you, and I hope that you approve it. I think it'll be a great tool for the public to have a better input into what we're doing with our recreation and lands. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, those were the 4 that were signed up. I'll take the liberty to ask anyone else if they wish to speak. Okay. Chair will entertain discussion or?
discussion, please.
Motion for discussion.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Okay, so can we go through the bylaws? Because I definitely have some questions. I actually sat with Bob Smith, and we went through the bylaws, and, he gave me some insight, and I definitely have some questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. So on Section 2 of the bylaws, it says that this commission shall only advise on the United States Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management, Kingman Travel Management Implementation Plan until otherwise directed to advise on other commission agenda items not related to the travel plan by affirmative vote of a majority of the then sitting supervisors of the duly noticed and agendized meeting of the Board of Supervisors. So who's going to be making the agenda? And so it's very narrow, and I do think it has to be narrowed. But so what this part is basically saying is that they can only speak about the travel plan, and then they have to put it on an agenda, then it has to come in front of us, and we have to approve it. Am I reading that correctly? Like, what would be the process of getting items on an agenda in front of this board by the board?
Well, what the board could do it the normal procedure where the board could go to you, to one of the supervisors, any of the supervisors, and say, hey, we want to bring this to the board. Then the supervisor would put it on the agenda like the normal procedure that we do. And then the board would come here and they can address the item. So for example, if they looking at section 2, they're to advise on the Kingman Travel Management Implementation Plan. Let's say they wanted to go beyond some other issue. They would approach Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Angus would say, okay, let's go ahead and address that. You would then put it on the agenda and then come forward to this board, at which point we would discuss it in public.
So every time this commission wants to talk about something, we have to discuss it first?
No.
Well, that's what it says.
No, they're talking about the Kingman Travel Management Implementation Plan, unless there's something else beyond that. Let's say it's a different issue that comes up related to public lands
Right.
that they want to address. Then that topic would come before this board, at which point the board would approve it and say, yes, you go forward, and then they move forward on that separate topic.
Mr. Hendricks?
I can, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Angus, I can tell you how I envisioned, not that it was my idea, and it wasn't, but envision this functioning is that, staff at Public Works, more specifically from the Parks Department, will act as the staff for the committee and will create an agenda based on what the committee believes they want to discuss. And it will be specifically directed towards this travel management plan, unless the board directs them to look at other things. But what they'll do is they'll meet as quickly as possible. I'm not sure if it states it in here. They'll talk about officers and getting people in place and start discussing the issues that are relevant to them. And my staff, Steve Letowski's staff, will collect the information, and then if there's any decisions that need to be made or direction that needs to occur with the Board of Supervisors, they would bring it back and agendize it in front of you so you could make a business decision on it.
Okay, so we are making this only about the travel management plan. I guess what I'm saying is, like all the other advisory commissions, they come up with the things within their committee, either by the chairman or Public Works or Public Health. Why can't this be the same way? It just seems like it's a little bit more bureaucratic. That every time, so let's say Rick Swats is on it and he has an issue that is concerned about. What would be the process for him getting it on the agenda to be heard by this new committee?
Let's say there was another management plan that came about, Mr. Chairman, and let's say the Arizona Strip travel management plan. Before they would take that on, the board would say, we would agendize it before the board, and the board would direct this particular group to expand their activities to include that.
Do we do that with any other of the, I mean, not even P&Z. I mean, everything goes through P&Z. It just seems like there's another level that's not necessary.
And Mr. Chairman, this particular bylaws was actually modeled after the Transportation Commission bylaws. So the narrowness of it on focusing on the travel management plan was drafted into this, the bylaws, because we believed at the time that was what the board wanted. The board wanted this specific issue addressed, and that's what the people came forward with. It can be anything you all want. We can certainly change the language, but at least to appease all supervisors, we believe that this language was necessary to place in the bylaws.
Well, I don't particularly like this language, frankly. I think they should have a little bit more latitude and not have to come before this board and wait 2 weeks or a month before. Well, I guess that doesn't matter, but I know that you don't want to, don't want it to be too encompassing, but I think we're narrowing it down too much. I mean, there's going to be, according to bylaws, there's going to be a representative from the board there. There's going to be a representative from Public Works. It's not like just a bunch of people on their own. There's going to be a process and.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, if we change that language, and this could be brought back before the board, and we could, our you could approve this language as a change, and we could go ahead and approve the bylaws and get this commission started. But if it read on Section 2 that the commission shall focus on the United States Department of the Interior Bureau of Land Management unless otherwise directed, would that help in the language and make it more palatable to you? Focus.
I think so. What do you think? Yeah? Yeah.
It may be more palatable to you, but it may not be to everyone else.
Okay. So it's,
My understanding was the reason we got this done so quickly and so precisely with the expedience that we needed was to focus on this one issue. Now, if we were to bring other issues, it may be problematic in solving what we're trying to solve. I've got no problem in adding primary focus to it. I really don't have a lot of problem to it. But what if a member of the public or even another supervisor brought to you, I want to deal with the borough issue with this commission? That would cloud the issue, bring on another whole different sphere of problems. So I want you to think about
why
your
would that be a
primary
problem?
focus.
Why would that be a problem, though? Because it's just an advisory. So if somebody comes into that commission and says they're, I don't know, boroughs, but the thing is that this...
We got to protect the boroughs, make sure they don't get run over by the four-wheelers. So.
The travel management plan, as I understand it, is sort of winding down, and there's a lot of changes and that have already happened, and that's going to be sort of over. And so you're saying that this is only for problems that arise from the travel management plan? I mean, that's not how I envisioned it. I envisioned it as having people have a say in things that come up from time to time that may be issues for I like the recreational use. I mean, we kind of narrowed it down there, and that's what I thought we were giving is the recreational, but there's definitely going to be more issues coming up, and it's just to talk about it. I don't see any problem with talking about it.
Chairman Watson.
And there's not going to be any decisions made in this committee.
Supervisor Bishop?
The committee members that I've asked to be on this board were told that this was specifically for the trails, the issues that are going on right now, and we wanted to expedite it so that they would have time to be able to give their input and to stop some of these trails from being closed that they feel strongly about. And I think if we start adding on more and more that the two that I've asked to step up might want to reconsider whether or not they want those kind of time commitments on a committee that's going to go on and on and on. I think right now, the way I understand it is the main focus of this committee is going to be those trails, and that if it turns out to be something later, they can always resign if it's too much work for them and their personal lives to carry on all of the public land issues. And there are many, I agree with that. But I'm not sure this commission is wanting to take on the federal government and all the issues that we have with them. So I just want to concentrate on trails for now, and we'll see where it goes.
See, that's why I thought we narrowed it down to recreational use.
Well, we only have a
the
couple.
Trails but this I'd be willing, because I know that time is of the essence because of the comment period ending, right? So that was the big thing. So I'd be willing to go forward with what's here, but with the notion in back that I want to massage it and get it to be something a little bit more important, and something that will address some other issues that people have with recreation use in public lands.
Tell you what, I'll go part way with you.
Okay,
As long as it's the primary focus.
perfect.
That work?
I like it.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The problem I see with expanding it is I think we were formed for the travel management plan. I think the people that are volunteering to go on it are basically the off-roaders right now. If we expand this, then you have to look at mining interests, hikers, ranchers, environmentalists. All those people should, have a seat at the table because there's a lot more things that get involved. And I think that right now we should keep it to the travel management plan. And if something else comes up and we feel that we need to form another committee, we can do it, because I'm pretty sure that the same people that are on this now, like Supervisor Bishop said, are not going to want to sit on the other, and I don't think there's enough issues that come up without us making up the issues to keep a committee going, month after month. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson.
Well, again, it's for recreational. We're not talking about mining, we're talking about the recreation. So it has a narrow focus as it is. So if we could just have it the primary focus, so it just gives us in the future, because we don't know what's going to happen, and so that we can get started on it because of this, and that will be the focus. But if in the future something comes up and one of the committee men or supervisors want to bring something in front of it, it'll be able to do it because the bylaws will allow it.
If I may say something, Chairman, as well, if we do that, so to me, there's two parts of that section. One is the PLNR Commission shall primarily advise, that would be the change, primarily advise on the United States Department of the Interior Travel Management Plan until otherwise directed to advise on other commission agenda items by affirmative vote of a majority of the supervisors. So that's still, that second part to that clause is still pretty narrow and controlling. So if you really want to go the direction that Supervisor Angus is wishing, you probably ought to address that second clause as well. And otherwise, we'll still always have to come back in front of the board, this board, to determine whether they want to address another issue. So if you really want to go the route that Supervisor Angus is recommending, you probably ought to take out that second part to the clause.
And then it will act like every other advisory commission that we have, except the Transportation Commission, which is really the only one that comes back to us before it gets put to them, right?
Well, yes. Let me just add one thing before the county manager jumps in real quick. Just to keep in mind that this is a different, some of the commissions you've already mentioned are by statute, and they have to go, there's a statutory process by which those items have to go to them, like the planning and zoning. Planning and zoning is set by statute. We can't change that. This is not by statute. This is something that is just purely advisory. So, I mean, you can do what you want with this section 2. It's just the way it's currently read. Even if you make that small change, it's still going to have to come back in front of the supervisors. And if that's what you wish to do, that's perfectly fine. I'm just kind of pointing it out.
Okay.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can, and it was correctly stated that everything that the Transportation Commission looks at is given to them by the Board of Supervisors to review. And it's a different animal than this Travel Commission. However, by having it, the language that's being suggested and leaving the clause pretty much intact, the board actually has the authority to focus the commission on what the board deems is important, and you don't have a commission out there possibly being in contradiction or opposition with the direction that the board is going on certain issues. And that could happen. Basically, when the board takes a position, wants support and wants things looked at and advice, the board should be asking the commission for that advice. That's why I think it's important to retain that last portion of the language in there, and then primarily focused on this particular issue.
Okay.
But I think it gives the board a lot of flexibility.
I can live with that.
You can live with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, there's a couple more things in the bylaws. Article 3, Section 2, you have that it will be appointed to serve a term of 1 year. I think if people are on it and they've got involved, that may be 2 years, like the other.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Public Works had some recommended language that we wanted to insert there that was more along the lines of what the supervisors, we believe the supervisors were requesting. And where we've gotten, we can overcome some of the difficulties that we've gotten with some of the other commissions to say that a member serves at the discretion of the board, individual board member that's appointing board member. And did you have that specific language, Steve?
County Manager Hendricks, yes, I have.
Would you like to read it, please?
Absolutely. And members of the board, Chairman Watson, the staff was a little closed-minded in recommending the 1 year term, primarily in the premise of the travel management plan, but Staff would respectfully recommend language as it pertains to this. I'll just read it verbatim. Commissioners representing supervisory districts shall serve at the pleasure of the supervisor of that district, and commissioners representing a Mojave County supervisor and public works representative shall serve at the pleasure of the Board of Supervisors until upon their initial appointment by affirmative vote of a majority of then sitting supervisors at a duly noticed and agendized meeting of the Board of Supervisors. So it would be an indefinite term at the pleasure of either the supervisor appointing the commissioner, if that commissioner represents the district, or at the board.
And staff recommendation would be at the pleasure of that supervisor that was appointing the member.
Okay, so if someone has a term and a new supervisor comes in, that new supervisor can choose to keep or change their representative?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, that's correct.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Letowski? Okay, very good.
The meetings are going to be held the first Thursday of each month, every month? Okay. In the bylaws, Section 3, Article 4, Section 3, I think it's just a mistake. The chairman and vice chairman should be elected at the June meetings, but we're going to be starting it in November. I mean, I know that you made changes too, because this was taken from another, right? So I don't have, did you submit the new ones as backup with the new language?
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Angus, no, I have not submitted the
So do we have to go through all this now at this meeting, or can we just accept that the changes that I'm sure he spoke
With
to
the
all the
changes,
supervisors?
Be
can
my
make the changes.
recommendation to accept it as it is and change it as we
Okay.
need to.
Well, if that's the way it should be done, let's do it.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Let's do it. So what was the one little word change that you made?
Primarily
Primary
focused.
focus. Okay.
And then also the change that was suggested on the term.
Right.
We're going to
Yep.
change out that paragraph with what was proposed by
Okay,
by
so
Mr.
can I just
Letowski.
say with the new wording?
So to where, and just to clarify for the board, to where it serves at the pleasure of the appointing district supervisor, which means that that whoever the supervisor is of that district that appointed that particular member would, the person would serve at the pleasure of that supervisor.
Okay, so let's see. Approve the adoption, make a motion to approve the adoption of Board of Supervisor Resolution 2018-128, establishing a Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission consisting of 2 members from each supervisory district and one Mojave County supervisor and 1 Public Works representative having the responsibility for making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding, with its primary focus, the United States Department of the Interior Bureau of Land Management, Kingman Travel Management Implementation Plan, and approve the Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission bylaws with the changes that the appointed commissioner serves at the pleasure of the appointing supervisor.
Nice job.
Pleasure of the supervisor from the appointing district.
From the appointing district.
You don't want a previous supervisor controlling whether or not that person stays on the commission or not. So the supervisor from the appointing.
Right, from the appointing, exactly. Okay, you got that?
I'll second it.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yep.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to take a 10-minute break before we go further into our agenda.
Are we going to appoint our choices and choose the supervisor that will be representing this committee?
No, it's not been agenda.
It's not on the agenda?
Not agendized.
Okay, I thought it was.
So we'll take a 10-minute break.
Oh, okay, but if the meeting's going to be November 1st.
So 2 members.
If you'll please take your seats.
Should I do a motion to reconsider? How do we get back to it?
Mr. Esplin, you believe it's within the item to make the appointments and appoint the supervisor under item 55?
I think you can, if you wish to. Some people, you may not wish to if some of them are not ready to do it, you may not want to do it. But I think it is broad enough because it says consisting of 2 members from each supervisor district, 1 Mojave County supervisor, and 1 public representative. So you can if you wish to. It is related thereto. That's kind of the language. It's the item and it's related thereto, and it encompasses within that.
Okay,
However, I don't know if you're ready to do that. That's something for you guys to decide whether you're ready to.
Well, I want to make absolutely sure we're within the parameters of that agenda item. So,
I do.
With
I
your
believe so.
advice, I'll proceed.
Yeah.
All right. Do we need a motion then to go ahead and pick or?
You can do that if you wish. But you ought to make a motion to determine now, because I think there's some members some supervisors who do not want to go forward today.
Okay.
You should make a motion. That way you can vote on it, and if the majority of the board doesn't want to go forward with it today, then you won't.
Good advice.
Is that for appointing the county supervisor that would represent and appointing your 2 members?
You would make a motion to that effect, or you could separate it out if you wish to. It's whatever motion you wish to do.
Excuse me, Chairman Watson and board, the 2 members that they're appointing have to fill out our application to be on a board. They cannot just appoint those people. There's a background check that goes along with that. So that's a whole separate process. This gives them the right to do so, but they do have to fill out this application.
But they could be named today.
No, I can't.
Independent?
Yeah,
Pending,
contingent upon
yes.
completing the application and completing the background check,
Right.
yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay, Chairman Watson, I will make the motion that this board go forward and appoint the supervisor to represent the board, and also each supervisor appoint their committee members pending receipt and approval of the background application.
Okay, we have a motion.
That work?
I'll second the motion. Any further discussion?
I do. I have something to ask. Right now, I only have 1. I'm still sort of
ahead.
out for, yeah, so just second to be determined? Okay.
And I have, the scope of this board has changed because originally I was under the assumption it was for road closures only, and it wasn't going to be a commitment for meetings every Thursday, because some of the people that have expressed interest are working, and that creates a problem.
Chairman Watson, it's not every Thursday. It's once a month.
I mean, once a month still.
Okay.
It's
I believe it's the first Thursday of each month, and it was posted, the first meeting would be at 2:30.
I'd have to revisit the people I've been talking to.
That'd be fine. We have a motion to appoint the supervisor and also 2 from each district. I seconded the motion. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so we'll start with Supervisor Johnson. Do you have 2 people that you would like to propose for the commission?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman, and I disagree with Mr. Esplin's legal opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bishop?
Yes, I will be appointing Rick Swats. He's from Golden Valley, and also Don Martin, who's from Kingman, and they do have other applications.
Okay. Supervisor Angus?
I will be appointing Bob Smith, who will have his application shortly, and a second to be determined.
Okay.
No, I don't have, I have to revisit the people I've spoken to see if they are still interested in long-term commitment.
Okay, very good. And I have Mr. Wisdom that would like to serve from the Valley Vista area, but I've not made confirmation on my second. They've shown an interest, but not a confirmation. So with that, let's move to the appointment of the supervisor. I'll make a motion that we appoint Supervisor Angus to be the
Second.
supervisor of the new commission.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Supervisor Angus to be the lead in the Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. I believe that concludes item 55. On to item number 56. This is the discussion, possible action to designate all attorneys as hot jobs due to an ongoing difficulty in the attraction and retention of qualified attorneys, and approve an adjustment to attorney job classifications as follows. Attorney 1 from range 21 to range 23, Attorney 2 from range 23 to range 25, Attorney 3 from range 26 to range 27, Attorney 4 from range 28 to range 29, and office directors, chiefs from range 30 to range 31. Further authorize up to the corresponding salary increases resulting from the range adjustments and other step adjustment consistent with the spreadsheets that are attached to the backup at the discretion of each department head, with an effective date as November 10th, 2018. Direct the County Manager Hendricks to end the LRAP upon proper notice. Do we have questions for Mr. Matt Smith, our county attorney? I don't believe there's any questions. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Ms. Lloyd, if she's available.
Okay, Ms. Lloyd, we have a question from Supervisor Johnson.
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. Where are you finding the money to cover this?
Included in the backup, we prepared some spreadsheets, and I'll identify that for you. With the balance of the elected officials' retirement system pension that we budgeted for, we had a balance remaining of $109,946 that we had left over after all of the adjustments occurred. We had a balance remaining in the left behind funds that were issued of $172,250. The Public Defender's Office is going to eliminate a mitigation specialist position. That is budgeted at $57,896, and that position is vacant. With the elimination of the balances of the LRAP, which is the Educational Assistance for the Attorneys, that program, the departments would fund about $59,466 with the termination of that program. And the Sheriff's Office came up with $2,422 from the line item from the repair and maintenance communications line item
for a total of $401,980.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you,
Lloyd,
Lloyd.
I have just one question. Do we have the funding, obviously this year we do we have the funding to carry on in the following years to continue this?
Absolutely, as long as revenues will come in at the current amount, and that was part of the proposal, that it did have to be sustainable in order for us to do this. We budgeted the full amount for the EORP and the Left Behind going forward for this current year and going forward, so my answer would be yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd.
Thank you.
Chairman Watson, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 56. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yep.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 57, discussion, possible action for the approval and adoption of Board Resolution Number 2018-132 for the employment of Keller Rohrbach LLP to represent Mojave County in the multi-jurisdictional opioid epidemic litigation, authorizing the chairman to sign all necessary and convenient documents to county's behalf, and directing the use of any money sums recovered from the litigation toward addressing the opioid addiction, abuse, and overuse in Mojave County as specified in the resolution. Supervisor Angus, you
Thank you, Chairman Watson.
brought this to us?
I brought this forward last month, I believe, and we had a big debate about it, morally, ethically, financially, and I thought it was a very interesting discussion. I think we all kind of agreed that we don't like this kind of thing, but, you know, it's going to happen with or without us, and if there's something that we can do for our constituents. And I listened to what Supervisor Johnson and Supervisor Bishop said about how the money would be used, because historically, when the money, by the time money comes in, political boards use the money for pretty much whatever they want. So I spoke to Ryan Esplin, and we discussed, and he researched some ways that we could, as this board, determine if and when this money comes in, where the money will go. And you know, and not have future boards be able to untie our decisions that we make today. So, can I ask Ryan, Mr. Esplin, if he will discuss that?
Yes. So what I did was I reviewed the current sales tax that Mojave County has, the one for the capital improvements, the capital buildings, that was passed nearly 20 years ago. On that one, the board passed the tax, but then specifically said that it shall be directed towards the capital improvement, the building of the administration building, the building of the jail, the building of a courthouse, those specific items. So I used the similar format to say, okay, if there's any recovery, because again, we don't know if there's going to be any sums, but if there is any sum, that it should be directed towards the to address the opioid addiction, abuse, and overuse in Mojave County. And if you look at the resolution, it gives in the specific details of what that would be. The purpose of that is to try in the future that if there is recovery, that it would be used for those specific reasons. Now, is it completely 100% lock-proof that it shall be spent on that? No, because a future board could unwind it, although I think it'd be very unwise, and I think it probably would not do that. I don't think a future board would do that, because we here today are saying we want this for this specific reason. And if a future board were to try to change that, I think there'd be a legal challenge to it. And I would recommend in the future to not do that, because you don't want to have that legal challenge. This board here today is saying, we want this money directed for this specific purpose. And we're passing this resolution for this specific purpose. So this is the strongest that I could find to try to say that any sums recovered will be going towards these specific reasons and for no other reasons. Also, if I could just add, Mr. Ron Kilgard, excuse me, he is a partner in Keller Rohrbach. He is the law firm that we are contemplating. He's a partner in the law firm that we're contemplating to retain their services to represent us in this multi-jurisdictional litigation. Mr. Kilgard is here today. He's in the front row, and he is more than happy to answer any questions, address any issues, any concerns that you may have. If you have a moment, I recommend that you, at least if you have any questions, to provide that to him.
Yeah, I'd like to
Please.
ask you, since you've been sitting here so patiently for a long meeting.
Learning a lot about local government. Hi, I'm, Mr. Esplet is correct. I'm Ron Kilgard. I'm a partner at the Phoenix office of Keller Rohrbach. The main office is in Seattle. The second largest office is here. And then we have offices in Montana, a couple in California, and one in New York. Incidentally, I listened to the video of the September meeting. So Supervisor Angus and Supervisor Johnson, I'm sorry you're not here, so I can't see you in person, but I'm up to speed on the concerns you all had and the, I guess you could fairly say, distaste you have for being involved in this sort of multi-district litigation. We represent a lot of clients in the West. Maricopa County isn't a liberal county either, nor Cochise County, and likewise with the eastern part of Washington. In the litigation as a whole, of course, as you may know, the governmental clients range from the reddest of the red, unless you all are going to claim that honor, from the state of Alabama, state of Mississippi, Lee County, Virginia, West Virginia, to, Chicago, Denver, the bluest of the blue. Ryan is absolutely right to describe the type of litigation it is. It's quite unusual. It is not a class action, Supervisor Angus. And when you get those letters in the mail with the $10, they irritate you, but that's nothing what they do to me. They enrage me because that's exactly what feeds this notion that these are lawyer-driven lawsuits where the company pays some money to get its piece and individuals don't get very much. I've been in practice, I'm born here and I've been in practice my whole career. Most of my practice has been in defense work, hourly rate defense work. But I got involved in plaintiff's work representing pension plans. Indeed, the last speaker mentioned the elected officials' pension plan. I represented all the judges in the state, all the general jurisdiction judges in the state with reference to that plan. So my background in this, then I'll tell you a little bit about the firm, is starting in pension plan work with company stock in pension plans. I was the senior day-to-day lawyer in the Enron 401k case, where Enron employees lost basically all of their retirement savings. We did lots of those cases, and unlike the $10 in the envelope, in Enron we recovered through, the case was in the Southern District of Texas, which is Houston, and the Southern District of New York, which is Manhattan, because the bankruptcy was there, and then also in DC because of the Department of Labor. We recovered over $265 million in cash. 35% of it did not go to the lawyers. It was 20%. The case took 7 years. We weren't paid a penny during all of that time. And there were people in the Enron plan who got well over $100,000 back into their 401k account without ever having picked up the phone or sent an email. Likewise in Global Crossing, likewise in the other corporate catastrophes of that era, like WorldCom. So those were class actions, Supervisor Angus, but they were class actions, and those are the type of class actions our firm tries to do, where there is significant benefit to the participants in those retirement plans, and there was In our system, if we were in a European country, maybe it would be different, but in our system, there's no other mechanism to do that. Even the people who lost the most in the Enron case lost 800,000 or 900,000. There's no mechanism for that person to sue Enron. And we've also done other major, we did the Exxon Valdez case, we did the Volkswagen defeat device case. We were part of the leadership of that. We were part of the trial team in Exxon. So that's the type of thing we do. And Ronald Reagan said the 11th Amendment ought to be do not speak ill of another Republican. And some plaintiffs' lawyers think that too, but I'm not one of them. The other firms in the leadership in this case, that is the 12 or 15 firms that are running the case, they are good plaintiffs' lawyers. They are good plaintiffs' lawyers. I am speaking well of them. Robbins Geller, Leif Cabraser in San Francisco, Motley Rice in South Carolina. All of those firms, we work with them every day, are doing good jobs for their government clients. The one issue Ryan was perhaps a little puzzled by, or maybe I just misheard, was on the fee arrangement. It's very simple. This is a completely percentage contingent fee arrangement. The costs are advanced, which we're permitted to do in Arizona, not in all jurisdictions, but we're permitted to do it here. For the first $500 million in recovery, and I'll tell you a secret, I don't think Mojave County is going to get that much. The fee is 15% if it is resolved before judgment, and 18% afterwards. All that means really is it's 15%, as will almost certainly be the case. It is resolved through a global settlement sponsored by Judge Polster. And if it's litigated and there's an appeal, and that goes wherever it's going, to the Supreme Court. In two of my pension plan cases, they did go to the Supreme Court. Then the fee would be 18% of the total. So, because we represent a lot of different clients of a lot of different sizes, it's a little confusing about, well, what about this extra amount? But that only kicks in our wildest dreams, to put it bluntly. I understand the board's, I'm from Arizona, I understand the board's reluctance to get involved in large litigation like this. I think Supervisor Angus is correct. It is certainly going forward. There are over 1,100 governments already in the case. And that excludes, incidentally, states. The state of Arizona has not filed a case except against only one defendant, but other states have. We do not, as yet, represent any states. We represent cities, counties. Here in Arizona, we represent 4 of the risk pools, of which Mojave County is a member of the ACIP, the pool that Bill Hardy runs. But the states that have filed typically file in state court, not federal court. They are typically removed, what's called removed, to federal court, because there is arguably a federal issue raised. And then Judge Polster has made a decision in general. He made an exception for Montana for reasons I'm not quite clear of. He holds on to those cases and doesn't remove them. Doesn't what's called remand them, back to state court. By this mechanism, he has, in his arms, it is a funny system that one district judge in Cleveland is doing this. He has in his arms basically all the opioid cases now pending in America. He is bound and determined from the first day at the first hearing to resolve them. He made clear to the lawyers, plaintiffs and defense alike, that he did not welcome this job, that this was obviously a job for the political branches of government. But since they hadn't done it, the MDL means Judicial Panel on Multi-District Litigation. The MDL had referred it to him, not for any ideological point of view because he has a reputation of being an excellent manager of huge cases. I mean, there are maybe 10 judges in the country like that. And he was determined to resolve it as quick as he could. He appointed 3 special masters. One is entirely on settlement. The other 2 are on case management, discovery, and so on. And as Ryan mentioned, the first trials are set in September, and the preparation for those trials is, is odd, but it's not really odd in the MDL system. Even though none of those 5 parties going to trial are our clients, the cases are so big that the MDL sets up committees to address various subjects. So my firm is on the committee for experts. So that means medical experts on addiction medicine, on opioids, damages experts, and impact experts on how you measure the effect of the epidemic on different types of municipalities. And they vary quite a bit. I mean, I actually heard things in Cochise County that I haven't heard here that maybe are quite different from County Attorney McIntyre. Other firms are on other committees. I mean, we are assigned to a committee for Mallinckrodt, which is unique in this setting because it is both a manufacturer and a distributor of opioids. So all the Mallinckrodt discovery is going on in Keller Rohrbach, and an awful lot of it in Phoenix. We hired 17 people to review documents because you get these documents in downloads of millions of documents. Other firms are reviewing Purdue documents or Indo documents or Johnson & Johnson documents. So by this means, we pool all this information. It is, I mean, if you ever think, and maybe you don't, but if you ever think these meetings go a little long and take quite a bit of time, you should be on the opioid weekly meetings where we go over what everybody in the firm is doing, who they talk to last, what the to-do list is for the next meeting, you know, who's traveling, who's in, et cetera. So that's, let me mention one other thing. The unusual feature, one of the unusual features of an MDL is they're not consolidated for trial with Judge Polster. This remains an Arizona case. It was filed in federal court in Arizona. If the cases don't resolve, Judge Polster will manage the cases, meaning supervise the deposition schedule, the discovery pacing, the disputes that are going to arise about experts, the disputes that arise in the depositions when the lawyers have too much red bill after lunch. After all that's done, the case will be remanded to Arizona for trial. So it could well happen that the Arizona cases are back in district court in Phoenix for trial after this process is over. Most likely, Judge Polster will be successful in working out a settlement of the entire litigation. So that's, maybe I talked too long, but and again, Supervisor Johnson, I heard everything you said. I am perfectly happy to respond. We obviously see matters differently, but if we accept this engagement, if you want us as your lawyers, we'll be your lawyers. We'll do the best job we can to get Mojave County, which does have, at least by the statistics from the CDC and the state of Arizona, some very bad actors running pill mills, and has a high rate of usage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to correct something you said at the very end. I know my county, and I don't believe we have a lot of bad actors. We have a few, but not. Some of the good ones are being smeared But that's a whole other discussion that you heard when we talked about it last month. I just have a question. Since you are representing the risk pool, ASIP, what benefit is it to us to be separate from that and with that? Because we're a part of that anyway, so how does that work?
The risk pool, the Arizona County's insurance pool, is only for workers' compensation. So what I have, what is it, 13 counties that are in the risk pool. So I have the spreadsheets of the prescription of opioids for county and county workers' compensation claims. And so they're allocated by money spent on opioids after 30 days, which in general is a trigger. So we add all those up. That's a number. And then we massage it, the defendants massage it. Is it too high? Is it too low? Because some people get addicted to opioids, guys who are hurt on the job, and then you have to pay further services for them, workers' compensation does. None of the other costs to the county are covered by the ASIP case.
Okay.
So, which are mainly, but it's mainly the sheriff's department, the jail, health, and lost productivity.
When you figure out this and you decide and you count the number of pills, are you counting the strength, or are you counting the actual pills that are being prescribed?
Both. We use this metric MME, which is, what is that? Milligrams of morphine equivalent.
Okay, because I don't think people understand that they have this thing called a report card that doctors have to do, and it's the number of pills. So when you see the headlines that Mojave County has given millions of pills out, so if you get a prescription for 10 milligrams of Vicodin, right, but you go to the pharmacist and they've only got 5 milligrams, so instead of giving you 40, they give you 80. It's the same strength, it's just more pills. I mean, it's just the way the makeup is, but the doctors are dinged for that. And I think that's very unfair, and I don't see how that's going to work in something of this magnitude. So, I know you're probably well aware of that, but it's something that kind of irks me because the doctors are treated like children.
I heard your comments on that subject, Supervisor. My dad was a doctor. Our lead lawyer in Seattle's dad is a doctor, and indeed he's actually a fairly prominent person in this opioid debate. He's a brain surgeon and a neurologist at the University of Washington. Ran a pain clinic there, and he was one of the people who became increasingly concerned that this idea that Purdue was spreading, I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but through its KOLs, or key opinion leaders, that opioids were an appropriate treatment for chronic pain. He became really concerned by that. And so he was one of the doctors in America who started sort of unpeeling it and actually read that 1980 5-sentence letter from the New England Journal of Medicine, which Purdue relies on so much. So you're absolutely right about that. The equivalence variance is enormous. It's confusing because Oxycodone is 100% oxycodone. Oxycodone is usually prescribed as another drug in conjunction with Tylenol, which is much, much weaker. No part of our lawsuit is dealing with how to balance the difficulties for a family practice doctor like my dad with patients like my wife's mother, who's in her 80s, with chronic pain. Right. I mean, that really is for the other branches of government. But and I realize some of you may disagree with us, but our narrative, it's in detail in the Kingman complaint, is simply that the Sackler brothers, after inventing medical advertising in the 60s with that great campaign of why Valium was better than Librium, even though they're basically the same, and Valium was Mother's Little Helper. And I remember my dad showing me in JAMA when the ads started going from boring black and white ads to these lavish color, dear doctor, with photographs and a worried college student, you know, rubbing her temples, and the caption, really, doctor, who doesn't need Valium? I mean, they invented that. The Sacklers invented that, and then they turned it to a new drug, and that
Right.
led to
I just have one last question.
Sure.
I'm sure I'm not taking up all the time, but I'm sure the other supervisors want to ask you a question. But, you know, our big thing was where the money's going. In your professional opinion, is this something other counties, cities, municipalities, jurisdictions are doing, is making sure that the money is going to where that deciding board, elected board wants it to go, or are we sort of out on our own?
No, you're not out on your own. I haven't talked to any government, and I don't think any of my friends in Seattle have, where that was not a talking point. I'm not aware of any governments that went to the lengths that you did to bake that in. There's some governments I can't talk about because, I mean, they haven't engaged us yet.
I got a suggestion early on that we do a trust. And that's another something to think about if there is even some, you know, fear that this won't hold up, because trusts are pretty airtight, right? And
well, right, but I agree with Ryan, I guess, although I'm not any kind of expert on municipal law, that it's hard for me to imagine how a board 5 years from now, you know, that ran on the campaign, turn the rascals out, I mean, couldn't do pretty much whatever they wanted. It's just very hard for me to imagine that here. We talked a lot to Maricopa County about that, I can tell you that. They didn't feel it was necessary to memorialize it, but, you know, everyone thinks that. I mean, when I talked to Brian McIntyre, I mean, he had very specific things he wants to spend the money on. Okay. So I guess anything's possible, but, you know, I too would be heartbroken if the money gets spent on traffic lights.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just have a comment. The gentleman said anything's possible, so maybe these companies can figure out how to manufacture a potent pain relief drug without the addictive qualities. So we can hope that some good comes of this. They
Hopefully.
haven't so far, but maybe. Thank you.
Indeed, Supervisor, a lot of the medical literature now, including the 2016 CDC report, is about that very subject, that alternative to opioids for chronic pain, back pain, migraine, fibromyalgia, are in the pipeline and are much more effective and are not addictive. So that is part of this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much better than jumping into cold water, I believe, which was recommended by a number of doctors here lately. So, Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Johnson, do you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions for Mr. Esplin. First of all, I disagree with his theory that we can bind other boards over. It's been told to us over and over again. And comparing it to the quarter-cent sales tax, we were told when we did that it could be overturned by other boards. I think the difference is that we've been spending the money because the board that was there continued the spending of the quarter-cent sales tax to build buildings. So it's a little tougher to come in and say, well, we're stopping these buildings and going to use it for some other function, where this money, when it comes in, it'll be the first function it's used for, and I could see somebody saying, you know, it was a great idea they had at the time, but now our focus is on whatever, and do it that way. So I disagree with that, but the question I would have, Mr. Esplin, is we've now had, I believe, 2 presentations by 2 different law firms Are we able to sole source this kind of a agenda item without going out to, to all the companies that are doing this?
Supervisor Johnson, I believe we can, and that was the leading up to this meeting, we ensured that Maricopa County's contract with Keller Rohrbach allowed for us to piggyback on it. I don't know the specific terms for procurement, but in working with Becky in the procurement department, we wanted to make sure that we could do that very thing, that we would be allowed to do that. And I've provided that in the backup to that where their contract allows us to do that very thing so that we would not have to go out to bid, so to speak. Also, I mean, and I know that this isn't precedent. I know that just because other counties do it or don't do it doesn't necessarily make it right or whatever. But my understanding in some of the other counties, or even the city of Keaming for that matter, they did not go out to bid. Again, that's not precedent. It's just a kind of helpful review that other counties did not go through the bid process. And also, just to add to this too, Maricopa County did go through the bid process, and I think that's why it allows us to piggyback on their services, because it went through the bidding process in Maricopa County.
Thank you. I guess in way of a statement, Mr. Chairman, I'd hoped that we were done with this item, but since it's been brought back to us for discussion, I want to ask, what side of history do we want to be on? We want to take the opportunity to make a stance and stand up for all citizens across the country and in our own county who are going to be the ones hurt most by these lawsuits, as well as present and future opioid legislation? Or do we want to join this lawsuit that does nothing for citizens of this county? I think one point that needs to be made clear, and I'm kind of rephrasing again, is that if we sign on the lawsuit, the money is eventually given to Mojave County. Any action we take today is not binding on any future board, and they can use the money for any special interest. And it's always easy to jump on a bandwagon and point blame at someone or something, in this case the opioid manufacturers, for the evils of the world. However, just because some politicians are saying that prescription opioids and their manufacturers are causing this so-called opioid problem does not make it true. The lawsuit is nothing more than, greed, and lawyers looking to point blame, get votes, and attempt to make a quick payday off the backs of our senior citizens who depend on these prescriptions to do something as simple as getting out of bed every morning. Something as simple as brushing their teeth and getting ready for work would be impossible for some folks if it were not for their legally prescribed opioid pain medications. Prescription opioids are not the problem. The statistics have shown over and over again that prescription opioids have continued to decline over the past 10 years. In fact, the Institute for Human Data Science released a report just this past Thursday showing a 9% average drop nationwide in the number of prescriptions for opioids filled by retail and mail-ordered pharmacies. Prescriptions for legal opioids have been on a drastic decline for the past 10 years, yet overdoses for opioids are up. It is not the prescription opioids that are the problem. The culprits are the illegal drugs such as fentanyl and heroin. Law enforcement has repeatedly said that these illegal substances are the problem, and they are what folks are overdosing on, not prescription opioids. If this country and this county want to help the opioid epidemic, they need to go after the right players. They need to zero in on the direct cause. Over 50% of the population of Mojave County are 45 and older. For the most part, they have worked hard, paid their taxes, and some have served our country so that we can enjoy the freedoms we have every day. These people are the ones you're hurting by going forward and joining the politically motivated lawsuit. I won't read you all the letters and emails I have received on this topic, as I'm sure you've gotten them as well. But for some of these folks, without these medications, they wouldn't be able to live a productive life, work every day, and raise a family. It seems to me we're picking the low-hanging fruit and making it seem evil when the majority of the problem is caused by illegal drugs. These illegal drugs are not coming from the opioid manufacturers. In fact, the majority are coming from places like China and Mexico. Attorney General Sessions released a statement in August about how the U.S. government investigated and brought charges against just 2 Chinese citizens for operating a conspiracy that manufactured and shipped deadly fentanyl and 250 other drugs to at least 25 countries, 37 states. There were over 1 million legal doses of fentanyl found throughout the United States, traced back to the Chinese operation. Fentanyl is one of the most dangerous drugs out there today. The synthetic illegal opioid being brought into our country is 100 times more potent than other opioids and 50 times more than even heroin. It takes much less of the drug to get the same effect. So it's also lethal at much lower doses than even heroin. Micrograms of fentanyl are effective rather than milligrams of other opioids, making it extremely easy to overdose on. Along with the Chinese, the Mexican drug cartels are also shipping these drugs, not just to the United States, but to Europe and places in Africa. These drugs are not for medical use and are not necessary for someone to get through their day. These are strictly for recreational purposes only and are what are killing many Americans. Another major player adding to the opioid crisis are the so-called sanctuary cities. A recent bust of a criminal alien drug trafficking network in Lawrence, Massachusetts, an adamant sanctuary city, should demonstrate once and for all that the broader invasion and sanctuary cities are the main cause of the opioid crisis. In just one bust, law enforcement detained 50 illegal aliens who were operating in plain sight of authorities in and around Lawrence and charged them with gun, drug, and immigration violations. Several of them were also identified as sex offenders. They had enough fentanyl to kill half the population of the Bay State. Nationwide, the number of opioid prescriptions is declining, and the number of overdoses, over 50% linked directly to fentanyl, is rising. The statistics are pointing to the real crisis, and politicians seem to be ignoring it and going after the opioids they can make money on and win re-election off of. It would make more sense to me that if our county really wanted to go after the ones who are killing Americans, that we sue Chinese and Mexican governments along with the drug cartels for their role in the opioid crisis. However, I doubt that lawsuit would ever come to be, and again, no big payday would be seen for those of us who are pursuing the lawsuit on the opioid manufacturers. One factor that our state legislature lawmakers seem to be pushing for is the legalization of medical marijuana to help combat opioid addiction. State lawmakers almost passed a bill last session that would have allowed those who claim to have an opioid problem to be able to obtain a medical marijuana card. I'm not going to sit here and argue if medical marijuana would help with our chronic pain or not, but are we seriously trying to tell Grandma that she can't have the pain medication anymore, but she can go spend $300 on a medical marijuana card every year and then go spend at least $100 a week on marijuana to hopefully relieve some of her pain? Medical marijuana is not covered by insurance and is still considered an illegal drug by the federal government. Yet our lawmakers are pushing these types of bills through without even considering the consequences. I wouldn't doubt if this law saw another bill, or this legislator similar to it, try to be passed by our state legislation. I have personally made phone calls and spoken to doctors around the country who tell me they are not prescribing opioids to their patients for fear of losing their license and being harassed by the government. Last time I checked, all 5 of us on the board were Republicans. Republicans stand on a platform of limited government, and we are always the first to oppose universal health care system based on a stance that we do not want government in our health care. Yet we sat in this very room in January and failed to pass a resolution that would have supported this stance. The latest opioid legislation passed by our state lawmakers does exactly what our parties stand totally against. It got government involved in how doctors treat their patients. What gives these lawmakers the knowledge and education to tell someone what medicine or how much medicine they can take? Doctors have gone to school for 6 years and more and have education behind them to make these life-changing decisions. Sure, you always are going to have doctors that bend the rules and break the law, but we already have regulations and rules in place for them. The majority of doctors are good people just trying to help their patients, and lawmakers do not have the education and knowledge to be making laws that restrict what a doctor can and cannot do for his patients. Chronic pain patients who are being cut back or forced to stop taking prescribed opioids are turning to over-the-counter drugs like ibuprofen. This is of great concern to me, as it should be to everyone. Doctors are telling me that the substitution of ibuprofen has caused a recent increase in stomach surgery as the medication in large dosages eats away at the stomach and causes internal bleeding. Doctors have also cautioned me on the suicide rate that they will most likely increase as our seniors will choose death over a life of pain. When people are being forced off these drugs because doctors are too afraid to prescribe them, they are losing their quality of life that these medications were helping them gain and are turning to suicide as their only solution. These people are hurting by this knee-jerk reaction to an opioid crisis are not drug addicts. who head to the streets to buy their heroin to make up for the loss of legal opioids. No, they are senior citizens, our veterans, and our first responders who are injured trying to protect our community. These are our neighbors, our family members, our co-workers. They're the ones who will suffer, not the real criminals. They are the ones we punish. Take a look at our own employees, our county employees. It is getting harder and more costly for them to get their much-needed medication, which can result in the loss of work and also end up costing our insurance more. Our insurance is being forced to pay anywhere from $500 or $100 to $200 every 4 months for drug tests for each individual who goes to pain management. These drug tests do nothing to benefit the patient. They are simply being put into place so doctors can say they are giving these medications out to people who are not abusing them. It's ridiculous that we are treating people who have done nothing wrong like convicted drug addicts. So if this board truly wants to address the opioid crisis in this country, let's do what is right and stand up for our constituents who are suffering due to this so-called crisis. Let's use the Board of Supervisors' influence and stick up for our constituents by reaching out to our federal and state lawmakers to adamantly oppose the restriction being placed on prescription opioids. Those aged 45 and above are over 75% of the ones getting the opioid prescriptions in the country. The stigma that those on prescription opioids are the cause of the rise in overall opioid addiction and abuse is false. In Mojave County, over 50% of those currently receiving some form of prescription pain pills are between the ages of 50 and 80. These lawsuits and opioid legislations aim to hurt our most senior residents, not the young folks who are chasing a high off the illegal drugs. Even if this lawsuit is settled, the money received does nothing for those constituents who are going to suffer the most from this. If not altered by future boards, any money received will just go to clinics that mostly handle illegal drugs and those addicted to illegal drugs. Grandma sure isn't going to go to any of these clinics. By the time the money is received, those suffering today will most likely be dead. Our senior population is the one who will end up suffering the most from this so-called crisis. This lawsuit is a knee-jerk reaction to a problem that is being handled the wrong way. I again urge this board to seriously consider all the consequences of signing on to a lawsuit and stand up and take a stand for those who are too weak and too fed up with the bureaucracies interfering in their daily lives. We must not join this lawsuit because it's simply the wrong thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson.
Chairman Watson.
Many of your points are well taken. Thank you.
Chairman Watson, may I just address that very
Supervisor Angus?
long and well-thought-out response? I don't really see them, they're two different issues. The opioid lawsuit is not going to stop what legislation and the federal government and the state government is doing in terms of prohibiting doctors from doing and what you just said. We are working with the state government, working with I believe like you, everything you just said. We all have people in our family. I have a husband who's on hospice and can't get up in the morning without having these for his quality of life. I get it. I live in that world. I just don't see these two being connected. We have a problem with the way it's being legislated, and we're working on it, but I don't see how this lawsuit is going to contribute to that. We have big problems with these laws that the government is making, and I agree with you 1,000%. And you said something about you don't believe it's an addiction problem or it's an illegal drug problem. It's a law enforcement. So, maybe in our resolution we could make it more towards law enforcement. We can use this money for law enforcement. I don't think that future boards would have any problem with that. But again, this is a huge issue that we're just talking about something that's moving along. Is going to happen with or without us. And if we can have it to help our county that has been pointed out as ground zero, why wouldn't we? I respect and agree with most everything you said, but I'm going to make a motion, unless, may I, Chairman Watson?
Certainly.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the adoption of Board of Supervisor Resolution Number 2018-132 for the employment of Keller Rohrbach LLP to represent Mojave County in the multi-jurisdictional opioid epidemic litigation, authorizing the chairman to sign all necessary and convenient documents on the county's behalf and directing the use of any monetary sums recovered from the litigation towards addressing the opioid addiction abuse and overuse in Mojave County,
Supervisor Johnson?
as especially...
Has left the conference.
Oh, was that an editorial comment? And overuse in Mojave County with an emphasis on law enforcement, as specified in the resolution. So I just made a change in that one little wording.
If I may just interject, I don't know if you want to do the last part. And here's why I say, if you look at the resolution itself, I included law enforcement in there as
Right, you
well.
did.
The last, so kind of the key phrase we're looking at is examples of any, be it further resolved, the recovery of any monetary sums received from this opioid litigation shall only be used for the treatment of addiction and so on. I go through there, and then I give as well as to address and assist with the prevention and reduction of opioid abuse and addiction in the county. And then I provide different examples, and I put in there use by law enforcement for the specific purpose of deterring and eliminating the unlawful distribution or sale of opioids in violation of the law.
Right.
So
Okay, so we'll just keep it the way it was
I'd
from the
recommend you
original
do that.
motion. Okay, and again, I think that everyone on this board just wants to do what's in the best interest of our constituents. Don't want to make a, huge political statement. We're working with the government to stop them from these repressive and oppressive laws. But when it comes to this, I cannot, in good conscience, use my philosophical view to stop something that can help the county. So there you go.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll second the motion. Any further discussion?
And let me just make clear, it's the original
Yeah, the original,
resolution.
do I need
Okay.
to say it again?
No, I just
Okay.
want to make sure. Thank you.
Chairman Watson, I believe Supervisor Johnson is trying to call back in. Can we confirm if he's online or not?
Okay.
Has joined the conference.
He's back.
You didn't hang up on me, Supervisor Johnson?
No, I think Supervisor Watson cut me off.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Supervisor Johnson, Supervisor Angus has made a motion to approve the adoption of item 57. I second the motion. I think it brings you up to speed. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll roll call the vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. On to item number 58, discussion, possible action, authorize the chairman of the board to sign a letter of support for the Next Era Energy Resources, the White Hills Wind Project. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. At our last meeting, we were shown a presentation which pretty well explained what this company has been doing and what they project, and they're requesting a letter of support from this board, and it's been drafted up, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve that letter and allow you to sign that as the chairman of the board.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Chair, or Madam Clerk?
Supervisor
I
Angus?
almost said chair, didn't I?
Yes, yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 59, discussion, possible action, authorize the release of the initial payment to Dot Foods, Inc. in the amount of $300,000 as provided in the developmental agreement for disbursement of economic development funds. Mr. Hendricks, would you
Mr. Chairman?
have anything to add to this?
No, just that we've received the request for the initial release of $300,000 in the supporting documentation, and staff and the attorney's office has reviewed this information and is recommending that we go ahead and approve the release of the funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this would be to Mr. Esplin. County manager said that county attorney reviewed this documentation. What documentation did you review?
I've reviewed the backup that is provided. You see that? There's that, as well as also the original agreement that we had with Dot Food.
Okay, so nothing was verified. We have a letter that's undated from Dot Food.
I mean,
with a
I've
bunch of
also,
numbers that-
I'm sorry, Supervisor Johnson, my bad. Go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. I forget they got that 5-second delay. But have we done any verification? Did anybody send us a list of saying person X from Mojave County got a job there? Because it was supposed to be you were having people from Arizona. I see no documentation that these are our local people that have been hired or anything.
Supervisor Johnson, during the course of this, I've worked a great deal with the former Economic Development Director, Bennett Bratley, who provided a number who's provided some documents to me. I just can't say off the top of my head what they were and stuff. But I can tell you that there's someone here to speak to that, and I'll defer to staff to do that for us.
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Johnson, this is Kelly O'Brien. I am the budget analyst at Development Services, and I worked with Bennett Bratley, the Economic Development Director, before his departure. And I've also worked with the Finance Director, Coral Lloyd, in, excuse me, verifying approximately, 212 invoices and backup payment and financial and check records that was provided by Dot Foods. In addition, confidential personnel records were provided to us. Due to the trade secrets that Dot Foods is wishing to maintain confidentiality, they have requested that this backup be private records. But I can tell you that of the, let's see here, $34,076,818 in capital investment. I myself have looked at all of those records and payment verification, as has the Finance Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not
I
doubting
believe
how
that.
much money they.
Supervisor Johnson, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, the delay throws me off. I'm not doubting how much money they spent, and I'm not arguing over us paying them. The board voted on that, but it's still our responsibility to check when we give money out that all the criteria has been met. And my biggest thing was bringing these people in was that we were going to hire locally. I see no list that says, we hired, Gary Watson to be a truck driver and Gene Bishop to do this or anybody else, and they're all Arizona residents and they were working before at Mojave County or wherever they were at. I'm not of the opinion that I'm going to take somebody's word that they hired all these people. What do you have to say to that?
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Johnson, we did also, in addition, receive personnel information, and we received employee position data. That information was also redacted with employee names and requested to be maintained the confidentiality of that information. However, that is also
the personnel investment is also a section that we did verify, and we were able to confirm the personnel investment was made according to the agreement.
Very good.
So you're telling me that you have seen a list of the people and you know that they were Arizona residents working someplace else or not employed, and they are now employed by Dot Foods?
I have personally seen a list with current addresses with the position titles. However, I don't know the residences of if they came from somewhere else. I just know the addresses were Mojave County at the time of the position data was provided.
Okay, that's my question, Mr. Chairman. I'm not doubting that they didn't hire people and everything, but I think that was the biggest. I mean, the investment was obviously nice in Mojave County, but the hiring of the local people seemed to be a big selling point for the board. And I have a problem if we're not looking where a company should be proud enough of their employees, and the employees should be proud enough of getting a good paying job that they would say, yeah, I was working at X factory and wherever, and I got a better job because the Mojave County Board of Supervisors in the state of Arizona assisted in bringing in this building. It just bothers me that, we're coughing up money and not having any information provided to us, or at least verifiable information. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Johnson, but Dot Foods didn't send me an application, so I didn't.
Chairman Watson, since this is my district, and I can't say I've seen lists, but I can anecdotally tell you that I know so many people who are residents of Bullhead City who now work at Dot Foods. And in fact, I've had discussions with their manager, because one of the things that they were warned about was that it was difficult to get people, frankly, to pass drug tests. And I just saw the manager a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that that was like the farthest thing from the truth. He said, we found good people, passed drug tests, and they're ahead of schedule. They're going to be expanding. They have been probably the best thing to happen to Bullhead City in a very, very long time. They give back to the community in food banks and philanthropically, and they're just a pleasure to have in our community. And so I vouch, Supervisor Johnson, if that means anything to you, that Dot Foods is hiring from within the community. So I guess with that, I'll just make the motion to authorize the release of the initial payment to Dot Foods in the amount of $300,000 as provided for in the development agreement for disbursement of economic development funds.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for item 59 for the disbursement of $300,000 for the development agreement with Dot Foods. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 60, discussion, possible action, approve the revision of the personnel policies and procedures, section 6.3, portion G, social media usage, as directed by the board at the August 20th meeting, 2018. Mike, do you want to hit the top of this one?
Certainly. Mr. Chairman, at your August 20th, 2018 meeting, the board directed that I have information technology formulate a countywide social media management policy. Information technology and our county attorney's office have provided what they believe to be the necessary modifications to our personnel policies and procedures to meet what they believe is to be the board's intent, basically placing the responsibility for its use on those directors and elected officials. We're asking the board to approve the social media use revisions to the county personnel policies and procedures as presented.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Hendricks.
Chairman Watson. So just for some clarity, elected official, the employees that work for elected officials will be held accountable under this new social media policy.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, written at the very, I believe it's at the very beginning of our personnel policy, says that elected officials and supervisors are not covered under our personnel policies and procedures, which means that they're accountable to their constituents and would not fall under the purview of this. An elected official controls their departments, as do the supervisors, and should also hold their people accountable as they see is necessary. So
Well, you would hope
these
so.
policies wouldn't
Right, but you would hope so, because it is government resources and time, but that doesn't happen in this county. There are elected people who work for elected officials who go on social media during the day while they're being paid by the taxpayers to harass and libel and defame people that don't agree with them, or I don't know if the certain elected officials are condoning it. They know about it. And so I have a problem with that, because it doesn't matter, it's an elected official, but it's still government property. It's still taxpayer money.
I want to let the board know where I come from on this. Sure. And basically, I'm responsible for what I'm responsible for. And I'm responsible for the personnel policies and procedures. Basically, our human resources director has a say, but I have the final say. And I don't believe I have the authority or want to have any authority over you all, your staff, or any other elected officials, admins. Okay. So that's, if we did want to put that clause or that thought into this document, it would really be extremely difficult to manage.
I understand that. My point is, I would hope that elected officials would have the responsibility of at least having the employees that work for them do that the least what everybody else has to do. And here we go again. And so I just wanted to get that out there in public, because if people see that and they hear we're doing this today, and then tomorrow they go online and see what I'm referring to, I just want everyone to know that that is up to the elected officials. And if it's not stopped, all I or the public can infer from that is that elected official is condoning it. That's all.
Thank you for your comment.
Chairman Watson?
Supervisor Bishop.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve this revision of the personnel policies and procedures as noted in the agenda.
Very good. We have a motion. I'll second the motion.
Chairman Watson, I think, if you may, I think there's one elected official that wanted to speak briefly to this matter. It'd be the treasurer, Cindy Cox, if you can.
Yes, please. I didn't see any white sheets.
I'm so sorry, and thank you. I just wanted to ask one question. The employees that work for me, other than my 2 appointed employees, come under the what used to be the merit rules, the administrative rules, and there are very strict requirements around their social media use and computer use and everything else. Am I correct in assuming that?
That's correct.
That's what I thought.
That's correct.
Okay. Because I hold them to a very strict standard, and I just wanted to make sure.
The employees that I was referring to would be akin to a supervisor's admin, elected
So my
elected
admin
official, yes.
or my chief deputy, if 2 appointed. Okay, thank you.
I believe any of your employees that aren't covered under the merit rules, I believe your chief, I don't know if your chief deputy is covered under the merit rules.
He's appointed.
So your appointed people would not fall under that.
I don't know I haven't really looked into this particular issue. I
just wanted to make sure.
That was the intent.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Treasurer Cindy. Ms. Cox? Ms. Cox, next time, no, you don't have to come down. Next time you'd like to speak, just wave your hand so I can see. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion, I believe,
And a second.
and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor will answer to our clerk by a roll call.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 61, discussion, possible action, provide the direction to staff on moving forward with the public auction of 420 West Highway 66, Kingman, Arizona, and further identified as parcel number 304-18-802. Mr. Hendricks, you want to give us a little more
Thank you very much,
background?
Mr. Chairman. On October 16, 2017, you authorized an appraisal of the county property at 420 Old Highway 66, which is across from our administration building. Due to the $21,000 value identified at your February 20th, 2018 meeting, you directed staff to go out for a second appraisal. This second appraisal identified a market value of the property of $55,000, which is an increase of $34,000 over the original appraisal. I need to point out to the board that the City of Kingman has identified that they need this particular parcel of land to accommodate new water infrastructure associated with relocating the outfall line to the downtown treatment plant, and have asked for consideration of this request for granting the sale of this property to the city. I see the board's options at this time are retain and not sell the property, place the property up for auction to the highest bidder with a minimum bid of 100% of the $55,000 appraised value plus fees or such other terms, and for such other considerations as the board shall prescribe, or with unanimous consent of the board, sell the property to the City of Kingman without going through a public auction. Knowing that the private sale of this property could lead to higher costs to the citizens of Kingman and its surrounding unincorporated population in securing this property in the future, staff is recommending the board sell this property to the City of Kingman without going through the public auction process.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hendricks, what do we pay for this property?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How much did we pay for the property?
I'm sure that's in the backup. I think it was considerably more than what it appraised for, but
It was.
I don't have that off the
It's
top of my head.
$150,000.
Right.
Supervisor Bishop said $150,000.
I believe that's correct. That's the problem I have. We seem to keep getting stuck with everything we buy as high dollar, and every time we sell it, it's low dollar. I can't support selling something that, possibly we could use later and taking a whooping on it. That's all. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. I agree. I would hate to give up that much money. Supervisor Bishop.
Chairman Watson, when we brought this up originally back in February, the citizens that were interested in bidding on this property are still interested in bidding on the property. I just spoke to them, I think, Friday. So with that being in mind, I think as much as I'd like the City of Kingman to get the value out of this property, because it'll help a lot of people in Kingman as far as water in the future, I think it's only fair that this go to a public auction because we have two interested parties at this time.
Okay. Supervisor Angus?
No, I agree with that.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
I would agree.
Okay. Yes, I would, and my comment would be I would prefer it to be the public auction.
Okay, I will make a motion then, directing staff to move forward with the public auction on the parcel 304-18802, as described in agenda item 61.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. I've got a question. The appraisal is at $55,000, and I believe that we're required to not accept anything less than a
90%
10%
of the
reduction? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any further questions? Supervisor Johnson, did you get the information on the motion and second?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions? There being none, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call roll call vote.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 62, discussion, possible action, approve the list of real property in Mojave County held by the state under the tax deed in accordance with the Arizona Revised Statutes 42-18301 and tentatively schedule to hold a Board of Supervisors tax deed online auction in April of 2019. This is brought to us by our clerk, Jenny Anderson, and we have in our attendance the treasurer, Cindy Cox. Questions? With no questions, I'll make a motion that we approve item number 62 and
I'll
approve the
second
list.
it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
I'll vote yes if the clerk agrees to quit cutting me off.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 63, discussion, possible action, authorize and retain Roberta Livesey of Helm, Livesey, and Worthington to represent Mojave County in the property tax valuation appeals. Those are listed as TX-2018-000905 and 00020 on the currently existing cost-sharing agreement with other counties in the litigations. I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions? There being no further questions?
Chairman Watson, if I could just clarify one thing. One of the new cases does not list Mojave County as a defendant. In talking with Roberta, our attorney, she says she believes that's probably an oversight. So that's why I've listed that case in here, of these two cases.
Okay.
The second one does list Mojave County specifically, so.
Okay. Well, hopefully they'll forget. It'd be one less lawsuit.
Really, and in all seriousness, it's being driven really by one case. One case is driving all the other ones. All the other ones are just following that one case. I believe it's a Solar City case. So once that one case gets resolved, then everything would be a domino effect, most likely.
Very good. Okay, we have a motion and a second. There being no further questions, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yep.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Motion to adjourn.